Should I invest in new builds or existing properties? I'm Nicol from Opes Partners, where we help you become a successful investor here in New Zealand. And today, I'm going to cover this topic. Now, as you'll all know, the world of property investment changed a couple of weeks ago when Grant Robertson announced the new changes around the taxation of investment properties. So there are two types of properties as defined by the proposal so far. There are new builds, so a property that you have purchased directly off a developer and no one else has owned it before. And then there are existing properties, so a property which is rented out, but it's been previously owned by someone else. Now, the exact definitions of new builds are yet to be determined, but from what we understand so far, the government is saying that new builds are going to be exempt from the new tax regulations. Now, we use a return on investment calculator when looking at any investment property. Now, if we put a new build under the new rules into our return on investment calculator, the cash flow over 15 years looks a bit like this. So it makes about $45,000 positive income over 15 years. However, with an existing property, the new tax regulations mean that this property loses $30,000 over 15 years. So that's not just a loss of $30,000, but also a loss of the $45,000 worth of profit. So your $75,000 difference based on the new tax that you're going to have to pay as a property investor. Now, you'll notice that in years 5 onwards, there's some significant changes, and that's because the interest deductibility is being phased in over time, and we're working on the basis that interest rates are going to go up, because right now we're at record lows. Effectively, what the government have done by introducing this tax change has made your interest rate more expensive. So a good rule of thumb is whatever your interest rate is, times it by 1.5%, and that's the impact that it's going to have. If you're currently on a 2.3% interest rate and you're buying an existing property as a rental property, you multiply it by 1.5 times and you get 3.5%. That's your effective interest rate. If, on the other hand, you're buying a new build and therefore exempt from the change, that 2.3% interest rate is still 2.3. Now, as you can see, the 1.2% difference is the difference in the tax that you're going to pay after these changes are fully in place. And it makes about a $6,000 difference on a $500,000 investment mortgage. So it is quite significant if you're buying an existing property as a rental property. Now, going back to interest rates. Right now, we're at an all-time low of interest rates, and what goes down must come up in time. So right now, you might get an interest rate of 2.3%, but our expectation is that rates are going to return to somewhere around 4.7% if you look at a long-term average, and that's the 10-year average at the moment. Now let's look at an existing rental property at 4.7%. Once you apply that 1.5 multiplier, you get an interest rate of 7.1%. So it really is a significant increase to the amount of outgoings for this rental property. Again, if you buy a new build, that 4.7% is still 4.7. So it's significantly cheaper. The difference here, as you'll see, is 2.4% difference because of the extra tax you're going to have to pay, which is $12,000 more that someone buying an existing rental property has to pay on a $500,000 mortgage. So one of the key things to remember here is that right now, while interest rates are low, most investors can tolerate a little bit of extra tax. But when interest rates return to a more normal level, you're going to see a significant change to the amount of outgoings if you're buying existing properties as rentals. So just to summarise, investors who focus on new builds now have an advantage of effectively a discounted interest rate compared to other existing rental properties which are purchased by investors. So new builds have a better net yield. They have a better cash flow position than a property which has been owned by someone else already. Now, the improved cash flow is just an additional benefit to the other benefits of investing in new. With new properties, you don't need the same level of deposit as if you buy an existing rental property. If you buy an existing rental property, the Reserve Bank requires you to have a 40% deposit in cash or in usable equity. With a new build, that's exempt, so you can borrow 80% generally speaking from any of the main banks. You obviously have lower maintenance with a new build, so that's another advantage. Generally speaking, you'll have higher tenant demand as well because tenants like healthy, warm, dry homes. And of course, when you buy a new build, you generally have less competition because you've not got open homes, you're not going to auctions, you don't have to bid against other people. Now, are new builds right for all investors? No, they're not. If you're the kind of person that's a DIY expert and wants to go in, add value to the property, then new builds are not right for you. Similarly, if you like buying properties and flipping them, again, new builds probably aren't the right investment for you. But if you're the type of investor who used to buy an existing property and simply rent it out, or maybe do a little bit of maintenance, a bit of a paint job, the numbers probably don't work for you anymore. So now's the time to consider investing in new so you can get these exemptions and the other benefits.